I'm not ashamed.
What was Israel's response to God's punishment of 40 years of wilderness wandering? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Numbers on Walking Through the Bible.
The glory of his cross.
If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to Numbers 14. We're going to be reading from verses 39 to 45. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So, Numbers 14, beginning at verse 39. Then Moses told these words to all the children of Israel, and the people mourned greatly. And they rose early in the morning and went up to the top of the mountain, saying, Here we are, and we will go up to the place which the Lord has promised, for we have sinned. And Moses said, Now why do you transgress the command of the Lord? For this will not succeed. Do not go up, lest you be defeated by your enemies, for the Lord is not among you. For the Amalekites and Canaanites are there before you, and you shall fall by the sword, because you have turned away from the Lord. The Lord will not be with you. But they presumed to go up to the mountaintop. Nevertheless, neither the ark of the covenant of the Lord nor Moses departed from the camp. Then the Amalekites and the Canaanites who dwelt in that mountain came down and attacked them, and drove them back as far as Hormah. Israel is in Kadesh and has rejected taking the promised land because they thought that the land was too fortified and the people too strong. They forgot that with God nothing was impossible, and as such, God was going to punish them. Originally, God was going to destroy them all and make a great nation out of Moses. Moses interceded and pled for mercy, and God granted that request. But God was not going to let this sin go unpunished. Otherwise, his people would not take note of his warnings again. What his punishment was that for 40 years they would wander in the wilderness until all those 20 years and older had died. Then, after that was done, those under 20 would be led to take the promised land. The exception to this was Joshua and Caleb, for they advised Israel that they could take the promised land with God's help. Now you can imagine that when Israel heard this, they were greatly distressed, as verse 39 indicates. You had been led out of slavery in Egypt, and now had been in the wilderness for about 2 years, being led to a country that was to fulfill your wildest dreams. And now, because of your lack of faith, you are not going to get to this land, but instead have to wander and die out in the wilderness. Think about it. Israel had already grown tired of the manna, and it had only been 2 years. Now, for many of them, it was all they would get for the rest of their lives. Instead of this sentence causing repentance and an acceptance of their punishment, as it did at Mount Sinai, they admitted their sin in this instance, but tried to defy the Lord's punishment. That is not repentance. Repentance is not just feeling sorry, but a sorrow that causes a change of heart and an acceptance of any punishment that comes your way. Israel realized that they had sinned. However, they didn't want the punishment. They now wanted the land and thought that they could simply change their mind, and because they were God's people, that God would protect them. So they decided that they would take the land. Now Moses pled with them not to do it. Notice here that Moses didn't intercede with God for the people here, requesting that he remove their punishment and allow them to take the promised land. He knew that the Lord had to punish Israel. Instead, Moses tried to warn Israel of their foolishness, for they had correctly said that Canaan was heavily fortified and their armies were strong. The only way that they were going to win such a decisive battle was if God was with them. At this time, though, the Lord was not with them. God had given them a command to go into the wilderness and wander 40 years. He wasn't going to change his mind, so if they did anything different, he would not be with them, and they would die by the sword. The same is true for us today. We have the complete will of God. We know what he commands. If we do it, he will be with us. But if we don't, if we follow after our own opinions, then he will not be with us, and we will suffer the consequences. Israel here didn't listen to Moses. They presumed that God would relent, just as he had relented at Sinai and here at Kadesh from utterly destroying them. And they were wrong. The Amalekites in southern Canaan and the Canaanites who dwelt in the mountains came and attacked Israel when Israel came in and drove them as far back as Hormah, which is in the southern part of Canaan. Defeated, they would have to return to Kadesh, for that is where the Ark of the Covenant was, and that is where Moses was. For neither the Ark nor Moses broke camp, for the very reason the Lord was not with Israel's endeavor here. What would happen? They would begin their years of wilderness wanderings, just as God had told them, starting here at Kadesh. That ends the narrative portion of this section of Numbers. In chapter 15, we're going to see more laws for the children of Israel before returning to a narrative again, the Lord willing, in chapter 16. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Numbers chapter 15, verses 1 to 10, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time.
I'm not a
Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.